Well, Candice Breitz is a Johannesburg-born and now Berlin-based visual artist. She has showcased her moving picture installations at major cities across the globe. Her recent career move was when she had a chance to represent South Africa at the 57th Venice Biennale with fellow artist Mohau Modisakeng in 2017. Well, in an effort to get to know her better, Morning Live producer Ikgomotseng Segopolo caught up with her this week while she was in Johannesburg in preparation for her upcoming solo exhibition. Let's take a look at how the conversation went while she was still in Johannesburg for the opening of this exhibition.
Let's perhaps start with you telling us about who Candice is and the work that you do.
Well, there's 46 years behind that question. So I'm an artist and I grew up in Johannesburg. I live in Berlin now, and I suppose you could say that I'm a storyteller. I tell stories using the medium of video, and I tend to share my work and to share the stories that I tell in the context of art galleries and art museums.
Tell us about the first time you knew that moving pictures and telling stories through that medium was your thing.
It took me a while to figure that out. When I finished high school, I, like many people, didn't know what was the right direction and what I wanted to study. And I applied both for architecture and for art with very little understanding of what either of those lives would be like to live. I ended up studying fine art at Wits, and having a fairly classical fine art education. When you study at an art school, you learn how to paint, and you study photography, and you study any number of media. It was really only after I finished art school and had the chance to continue my studies in the United States that I started to think about what language I wanted to use for my work.
You've just mentioned that you were born here in South Africa, Johannesburg, and then you moved to Berlin in Germany. Has that move had any influence in your art?
I don't know. I think that my work is very much about how we become who we are. And I think that is a sort of question which is endlessly fascinating to me, because depending on where we're born and when we're born and whether we're born to parents with money or not, whether we're born white or black in a country that, is living apartheid, whether we're born in the south or the north, whether we're born to educated parents or not, there's so many factors that shape who we are, who we can become, how we're going to live our lives. And I'm really interested in the question of how an individual or a subject is formed by so many social and human forces, economic forces, political forces. And obviously, I myself too have been forged by many visible and invisible forces. And it's hard for me to talk about what my influences have been. I'll leave that to other people.
And according to Candice, what is art?
Art is a way of looking at the world. It's a filter. It's a way of looking at things which you think you know, and maybe allowing yourself to slightly shift your understanding or shift your perspective through an engagement with an intervention that an artist has offered to you, whether that comes to you in the form of a painting or a video or a great piece of music. The way in which a piece of culture can slightly or radically shift your relationship to how you think.
You and Mohau Modisakeng, who's an amazing South African artist in his own right, had the chance to represent the country at the 57th Venice Biennale. How was your work as South Africans received internationally?
I think that very strong conversations were had about the South African Pavilion, and I think that the mixture of the two artists ended up being really there was a lot of substance there. What was interesting was that Mohau and I have a very different way of making images, and we have a very different sensibility, I would say. But what was interesting is that both of the pieces that we decided to install in Venice were really thinking about questions of forced migration and what it means, through choices that are not your own, to be forced to leave what you know, to leave your home, to leave your family. And so Mohau was addressing that from a more historical perspective, and he was thinking about the way that the history of slavery remains present, in South Africa. And I was thinking about it more in relation to contemporary waves of forced displacement. But so in some senses, the two works were addressing very different moments, but they were thinking about a very fundamental question, which is this question of what it means to belong to a place and what it means to be displaced from where you're from.
When you look at South African art and the artists that are trying to get their foot into the international market, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think it would almost be arrogant for me to try and give them advice, because this is a really vibrant, amazing, exciting moment in terms of South African culture in general, but in terms of what I know and what I'm most closely related to, contemporary art. There are so many South African artists who are making such challenging and such brilliant work, which is both critical and innovative in the way that it uses form, that I think that it's just an interesting, exciting moment to watch what's happening in the South African contemporary art world.
Well, stay tuned for more of this conversation as they get into more details about her upcoming South African solo exhibition. Do stay tuned to Morning Live. Let's take a short break now.